Want to do a little bit of an update on the COVID situation. It's the gift that keeps on giving. It just goes on and on. I heard some statistics recently that in London the suicide rate has gone up by 100%. So I think we always talk about COVID deaths, but I think we should talk about lockdown deaths. Because that's the thing which, to my mind, is going to be far more problematical in the future. I mean, I've heard people say 30 times as many people will die from lockdown as have died from COVID. And when you actually listen to the figures, the things we just see as 1,200 COVID deaths. But actually what they say is people who have died within 28 days of a positive test. And a positive test is very easy to get. So if you're going to be dying of end-stage cancer, end-stage lots of things, and right at the end you get COVID because it's in hospital, then you're a COVID death. Not really.
Never say the day won't come, for all you know it has begun.
At the moment, we have a situation which, if you were to look at us from space, you'd see that they lock up their population and keep them under strict curfew, and that they haven't got any freedoms yet. You know, like aliens would go, well, by this stage you'd have thought they'd have had a certain amount of freedoms, but well, they haven't got freedom of speech because anyone can get censored for saying anything about. They could censor me. You haven't got freedom of speech. The only place you've got freedom of speech is in the chamber at the Houses of Parliament, MP's privilege. Other than that, anywhere in this country you say something which doesn't agree with the policy at the time, you can be imprisoned. You can be put behind bars for it. You can have your life ruined.
Even in your own home.
Yeah, if they have the powers under the COVID Emergency Act, that they can just go into someone's house, smash the door down, and take people out. They can take people off the streets. Their powers are quite draconian. And the same thing happened after 9/11. They got the Patriot Act, which was handily almost ready to go, so that went straight in, and that gave the ABC agencies, the NSA, the CDC, loads of about 50 different agencies have got the power to smash your door down in America and take you out and lock you up. And then, of course, they've got Guantanamo Bay, so they can torture you as well. Now that, to my mind, is pretty bloody worrying shit. I mean, it's obviously just temporary, but we haven't got the freedom of travel, haven't got freedom of association, haven't got freedom of speech, as I've said. Lots of freedoms have just gone. We've accepted being locked up, in our own homes. So we're not only that we're prison warden, we're the prisoner, and we're also looking at our neighbours and reporting on the helpful line for reporting COVID dodgers and things. Oh my God. And then there's all the adverts. Look him in the eye and tell him that you don't obey all of the orders by authority. Look her in the eye and tell her that you might have got closer than 2 meters. How about look them in the eye and apologise for 20 to 30 years of running down the NHS and causing a bed crisis? Look them in the eye and say, well, you can take your claps to the bank and they will give you a credit voucher for those. So those claps are very, very useful to you. A wage rise? Fuck off. 8% for everybody? Cheers, right? The pay review body and stuff. They give themselves money. Well, they'll still be buying frigates and warplanes and bombs so they can bomb people to the crap. I've gone slightly over from COVID, but it's all kind of linked, really. So we all assume that as soon as the danger of this terrible, terrible pandemic, which is, it's a case-demic. It's like an Elton John song. It's very, very catchy. So lots of people are going to get it. But for most people, the vast majority of people, nothing. Or, like the flu. My 83-year-old mom survived COVID, and her even older friend who end-stage cancer survived COVID. So, well, it's bewildering, really. But we need to recognise that we've lost our freedoms, and if we're not careful, we'll be tiptoeing bit by bit into a totalitarian state. Like China. Do we want to live in a place like China where your movements are monitored? You have to have permissions to go into buildings, to travel, to get on trains or planes. You'll have a passport which you'll have to renew every year, and perhaps they'll put a helpful little barcode on your arm for you. Or perhaps a chip. It'll be just really, really good, this chip, because it'll allow you to get things out the vending machine without paying. Oh, so convenient. Nice little chip. A little tattoo. Do we want that? Do we want to be like China, where you're being observed 24 hours a day, every day? Your movements, the people you talk to, everything's monitored. Do we want that? Is that somewhere we want to go to? I don't think it is. So, the totalitarian tiptoe. Do we walk into an ever nastier, more observed world? Because if we're always being monitored, why is it different for them? Why is there no monitoring for them? Why do they have utter privacy? And our privacy, that's gone, it's sailed. The whistleblower, Edward Snowden, the whistleblower and revealer of secrets, Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning, these people have whistleblown. They've told us that the NSA have been spying on everybody for a long time. GCHQ, I wonder if they're doing the same. I bet they are. They'll monitor any digital transmission. They'll have great data banks full of stuff. They won't be looking at all of the people. But if somebody's name comes up, somebody that they don't like, then, we'll just access some records. We are in 1984, or possibly we're in 1983, and we could stop 1984 if people wake up and go, wait a second. We kind of know we're being monitored. We know about facial recognition, and we know about full body scanners, and we know about doing as we're told, being controlled and steered, and we know that they're not quite as honest as they might have liked us to think. Which brings me on to one of my next subjects. Let me know what links all of these different things. This is a game for you, Aaron.
Okay.
Citibank, Wells Fargo, Goldman Sachs, Bear Stearns, Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase, Lehman Brothers, Dow Chemicals, Monsanto, Volkswagen, Audi, Mercedes.
They've all had bailouts.
Yes, they've all had bailouts and have also been found to be guilty of things. All of these have broken laws, and there's, I could fill the whole page up with massive, honourable citizens in there, multimillionaires, billionaires. The fact that we can have billionaires is just ridiculous. I mean, with $1 billion, just one billion, that's, you could go around with bundles of tenors, throwing them out like this to the peasants, And you could walk up and down the land doing this, and you'd never run out of money. Your money would keep going up and up. And in this COVID pandemic, hastemic, what's happened to the billionaires of the world? Their money's gone up by some staggering number.
I don't know, but I know
It's in the trillions. Their money has just gone up by a huge, 30% or so. Ours has gone down. We're having foreclosures. We're having more people on the streets. We're having terrible mental health because of something that's affects 1% maximum, and that's usually the low-hanging fruit. Usually, like people like my mom. Those people will always die. People die of flus every single year. We know this. Suddenly this year, the numbers seem to be... Well, I've heard the figure none, but I'm sure there must be a few, but not many. So where have they all gone? Where have all the other deaths gone? They're all been counted as COVID deaths. It's false figures. It's falsified. Oh my God, I think they will censor me. But luckily, fuck them. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So big concerns like Volkswagen, Dieselgate, they were found cheating, not sort of just fudging the rules or a little bit of a sleight of hand. They made a device which engineers had to construct, and then they had to put it onto the tooling and all the engineering involved. Volkswagen were cheating, blatant, out and out cheating. The software, the hardware, lots of people knew about it. Are there any people languishing in prison for it? Nope. Have there been a few people who've gone, oh well, I better retire on a massive golden handshake, and we'll say nothing more about it, done the honourable thing, etc. No, they haven't. This is how many, 5, 6, 7 years since? What has happened? They were protected, and there's lots of them who are doing it. The whole Volkswagen Audi group, plus there's Mercedes now have been found out, and Porsche and lots of others. And they are lying to people. Like when you look at a car, a petrol diesel car, it says 65 mpg, around town 45 and stuff. They say this is not a true figure. You won't get this, but you see it in your little brain. Particularly the old part of your brain just takes everything like a sponge, like a baby. Takes everything in. Okay, 65 miles per gallon. So the subconscious doesn't discriminate. It just sees 65 miles per gallon, super lean, clean diesel, blah blah blah. But it's not true. When they do these tests, it's usually the manufacturer that does the tests, and they have a lovely smooth surfaces that they go on. They have tiny thin tyres, often made of nylon. They disconnect the brakes. They tape up all the seams. It's a fudge. It's ridiculous. They're lying to us, and they have to keep lying because at the heart of it, petrol diesel cars are dead. They're old technology. It's like staying with the steam engine. Well, no, you've got, the steam engine was static and required a team of engineers. The internal combustion engine is way better. You don't need an engineer or anything. Aren't they fantastic? Well, they were, but they've had their day. They're obsolete. It's obsolete. It's not just a choice of being green or whatever. They're simply far, far, far better than petrol. The infrastructure is poor. It's rubbish. And why is it rubbish? Well, the Conservative government, it was about 12 years ago, said in another of their grand green statements, we are going to have charging stations in every single petrol station up and down the land. The idea of running out or having anxiety, those days are gone. And how many are there? I think it's about 60. 60.
In the whole country?
In petrol stations.
Okay.
These ones that, I think they're Shell.
Yeah, that's 60 in the country or 60 in Birmingham?
No, 60 in the country. You can check these things out. It'd be interesting
Yeah.
to check it. But I'm quite interested in EV stuff, and I kind of know what's generally going on. But yeah, please do check it out. But they've cut back on the electric car grant. They've done all sorts of things. And it's usually the driver that pays for it. Like in Birmingham, they're going to do the congestion charge, and they do it in London. So it's ordinary people who pay that. The rich people, well, they know what they're on, a good thing, and they buy themselves a Tesla Model S. Because they're just simply far better than petrol. I'd love to have a real petrol head and talk with them on camera. That would be interesting. I'll try that one day. Because they are simply toxic, producing inefficient machines. 30% efficiency. My little battery electric car out there, first generation from 2014, 95% efficiency. Your car, a couple of thousand moving parts in the engine. Mine, about 30. The efficiency gets, your mum's Tesla Model 3. That's even more efficient. And when it's given a charge at home, or it's a supercharger for half an hour, well, that's a week's motoring. They've got 250, 300 mile range. The generation 3 of my car has got a theoretical 250 mile range. It's about 200 really.
Yeah.
But who needs more than that? I mean, that's amazing. My bladder couldn't get anywhere near 200.
Have you ever run out?
Yes, I have once. And the guy that picked me up on the load loader and stuff, I said, "Oh, do you get to pick up many electric vehicles that have run out?" And he said, "Very few, but we get 20,000 a week, petrol and diesel, and people who've put the wrong fuel in. Mine is electricity. I don't care where it comes from. So it's just doesn't make any sense to run something that's an inefficient, outdated technology that kills people. And I heard somebody on the radio saying, "Oh, well, there's never been a link, between car exhausts and diesels and stuff and ill health." And I thought, are you an idiot? 30,000 people die a year, and that's the NHS's own figures, from the effects of pollution. When in March there was very few cars on the road, we had the cleanest air since the Industrial Revolution. People who had breathing problems were going, "Oh, this is good stuff." And people who needed medication and home visits needed less of them.
Never thought I'd lose you before the sun goes down.
There's a guy called Lord Sumpton, and he was a High Court judge, just retired, and he says, no, lockdowns are so over the top. It's an invasion of civil liberties. If people want to go out and run the risk, I mean, people ride motorbikes and horses, far bigger risk than the risk from COVID. We should act prophylactically and make people who are vulnerable, give them a much better diet, cook for them, give them good nutritious food and vegetable juices and fruit juices. We should take really good care of our old people. I think that would be a fantastic thing. I mean, our government tossed them out on the streets practically. The government, have got blood on their hands. There's so many people dying, and people who died on their own with nobody to hold their hands. Isn't that the most repulsive thing you could get? So it's a sledgehammer to crack a tiny peanut. It's unwarranted, and it's an infringement of all our civil liberties and our laws, and it's dreadful. And we people must and are around the world standing up and saying, no, this is not happening on my watch. That's why I think all of the people like Extinction Rebellion, Greenpeace, the Natural Trust, all of these gardeners groups and everything should just get together and say, well, there's a lot of us, and we can make a change. We don't have to have a bloody revolution. We don't have to fight them with pitchforks. We've still got democracy. We can still say, if there's enough of us, and Extinction Rebellion say it's 3.5% of the population, which is 2.2 million. 2.2 million? That's, if you think of all those groups, that's nothing. A big enough group could just say to the government, we have no confidence in this. We'll have a caretaker government until we sort something out that suits us and suits the planet, and then it's done. And you just get rid of all these massive multi-billionaires, not by killing them or anything, by just taxing them. Just pay your tax on it.
Do you think you're in danger of... It's almost like Cuba. See, the idea, communism as an idea, as a fundamental, is a good one.
Yeah.
But when you have people, so I'm saying how when the Green Party or Extinction Rebellion take control of the government, how do you know they're going to be listening to what people want, or is it just going to be their narrative? That's it. Is it totalitarian? How far is it from being a dictator to not, whether you think you're doing the right thing or the wrong thing? How do you balance that?
Okay, well, the better governmental system would be based less on party politics and more on rationality. If somebody is, for example, they're really great at education, fantastic, keep them there, and when they retire, get somebody else who's an expert at it. Get people who've been in the local area, people who know, like when Grenfell Tower, Carla and others stepped out and became known, and they had things to say, and they are the sort of people who should be representing us in government. Extinction Rebellion have got a great idea, which is a citizens' assembly. So you can have, you call it, don't change everything at once. So say we can still have an MP type system, but you have around about 300 people just chosen like you do for a jury. 300 isn't difficult to get hold at all. And you get people who are, you don't want some raving lunatic in the Ku Klux Klan robes, and you don't want somebody who's permanently sozzled on alcoholism, So you get 300, and they serve for a term, might be a year, might be a couple of years, depends how good they are really, and they look at everything that the MPs are doing and saying, so they've got, it's like another chamber, but rather than the unelected House of Lords, which is full of toffs and rich people, and people who are there because daddy was a lord and his daddy was a lord, and bishops just because, don't know. So we get a representative group of people, 300 or so, who are looking over what they do. And so you choose people from using something like a proportional representation, vote for any group of people. So you're still having that level of democracy, and then you've got a further layer of people who will be looking and going, wait a second, that's favouring your rich friends, that's favouring business, and it's actually decimating, ordinary people's land. You can't do it. So, goodbye House of Lords. Some of them were very good, lovely, but let's have a representative sample of ordinary people who serve for a term. Let's keep the best people doing the best job. Let's get people who are great educationalists to sort out the education system. Give it to people like Tony Buzan. Don't have all the power concentrated in one person. That's madness. What? Crazy. And then there's all the civil service who have been there for decades and decades, and they have more power the hidden government behind the government. You know, if you ever watch Yes Minister, you'll see that it's actually the civil servants who are telling the politicians what to do, which is why Thatcher loved it. She thought it was great. It was one of the few things she ever laughed at. Obviously, apart from the plight of ordinary people. I'm sure they gave her a tickled funny bone now and again. Ha! Look at those plebs. Ha! Let's do the poll tax. No, that's so draconian. Oh no, we'll do it in Scotland. That's free. We'll test it out there. Yeah, just amazing. You know, the links between these things. It's like some people have such a concentration on just one thing. That's the only thing they can see. But if you take a sort of a step back and you see all these different things, then you can sometimes see a pattern, and that's like, you know, joining the dots and you go, oh, it's a tiger. Whereas if you just look at the little macroscopic bits, and you know, you can go, oh, nothing to see here, just a problem in this area. But so that's what I really want to do with my series of lectures, is to try and get people to look at how things interlink with each other.
That's sleep a while, for in your dreams you'll find a home. You can go.
You know, so our desperately poor environmental situation, you know, we've got plastic which will last for millions of years in the sea, in the land, and in the air. Little tiny pieces of plastic, microplastics, floating in the air, and you suck those down into your lungs. I wonder what that does to your immune system. Can't be good. You know, fish, porpoises, whales, everything, turning up with loads of plastic inside them. Soon we won't be able to eat anything from the sea because it'll just be, yeah. So, but the link for that is to say, well, why are we having plastic that's doing this? Why don't we have biodegradable plastic, like, I don't know, hemp, which has been used for thousands of years? All those canvas sailing ships, that was the male cannabis plant, because seawater rotted cotton. So we've known about these wonder materials for ages, but why are we always going for this virgin plastic that lasts for millions of years? Well, one of the main ingredients is a fraction of oil. You know, the tarmac on your roads, well, that's a byproduct of oil. Oil is very useful in lots of different ways, and the politicians would have you believe that they're all for, you know, switching over to a completely renewable electric future. You know, Bozza has assured us that we're going to have this green revolution and blah, 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 blah. Well, saying things is very easy, but when you actually look at the reality of the situation, that is that they're not going to shift from oil in a big way, or they're going to fight it tooth and nail, because the infrastructure, the pipelines, the refineries, the oil rigs, it's a huge amount of infrastructure, and really it's obsolete. But they're going to keep on doing it, and they're still building new pipelines as well as closing down redundant ones. They're still fracking for all they're worth. They are not going to give up easily. So they'll make the transition to electric vehicles as slow as possible. So don't listen to politicians when they say these things, because as the old saying goes, how do you know when a politician's lying? When you can see their mouth move.
When you talk to me, do you mean what you say? I'll hold your hand, 'cause I'm going your way.
Along with that list of deviants I gave you earlier about Citibank and Wells Fargo, etc., there's a few others I'd like to add. Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell. They were definitely, well, Epstein hanged himself. Yeah, I'm sure he did. And he was a trafficker in children, and he was hidden for a long time. A lot of people knew about him. A lot of people were friends with Jeffrey, went to Jeffrey's Island. Bill Clinton went a dozen times, often without his Secret Service going with him. And there was lots of others he was friends with. Donald Trump and the Bushes and the Clintons. And yes, he was well known. And Bill Gates, of course. A lot of people rubbing shoulders. Anyway, Jeffrey Epstein, Sir Jimmy Savile, Sir Rolf Harris, Sir Clement Freud, Sir Leon Britton. Is anyone noticing a pattern here? They've all got Sir before their name. You'd have thought MI5 would have found them out and not let them get near Her Majesty. She could have been in terrible danger. Still, all those MI5 people who got sacked afterwards, I wonder. Catholic priests, a lot of that going on. The Vatican Bank. Hillary Clinton. Sir Edward Heath. Just thought I wanted to put those in. There's a list of other corrupt and dreadful people who've been hidden from public view. I wanted to talk about black lives. Now, there's an organisation, Black Lives Matter, and they had marches and done various things, and they're trying to basically say the situation, particularly in America, where black people, black men, get gunned down by racist white cops who get away with it. They're standing up and saying, no, this has got to stop, because in America the racism is endemic. I think I talked about the origins of the American police force, which was the slave catchers, and sheriffs and deputies were often the local heads of their Ku Klux Klan. So there's links and links and links. So George Floyd is one who's well known, but they're shooting and killing and stabbing and leaning on people all the time. George Floyd is just one of a growing number. Malcolm X, he was assassinated. Martin Luther King, he was assassinated. And it may not be everyone's knowledge, but I've heard that there was a civil suit from the Martin Luther King's family, and it was shown that the local sheriff and a shooter had been involved. But that's not something that's talked about greatly. John F. Kennedy, his brother, murdered either by the police or by the authorities in America. If they don't like people, and people are getting uppity, they crash down hard on any dissent. And you can see lots of pictures on YouTube of the American police battering strikers, shooting people dead. It's been going on for quite a long time. It's not new, which is why, really, the American police system, military police, is what they really are, paramilitaries. It's got to change. So you can't keep putting patches on it because it's endemically racist. The only thing you can do is to have a caretaker police force until you get a good police force that's representative of people, has men, women, black, white, whatever, representative of the community. People should be able to look at cops and go, oh good, I feel safer, not I'm likely to get shot. So tear it down and start again. Is there anything you'd like to say as a black man, Aaron? What are your experiences?
Well, not to go into my experiences, but just on that subject there, what you was just talking about.
Yeah.
and defunding the police. What would you do, or if they were to defund the police? First of all, how are you going to attract more African American, black British people to the police force? Because there's an inherent distrust.
There is.
How do you make sure, because you're going to still have to train these people to be police officers. So how are you going to make sure that they're getting the right training and not just being trained by the same old?
Yeah, we don't want to just replace the bad lot with another bad lot.
Yeah.
Which is always the thing that seems to have happened frequently in history. No, you have a caretaker police that are just keeping the peace until you've trained up and arranged so that people get training in all sorts of matters, so that you can recruit from the local areas and say, well, we are starting with a clean sheet. You're not going into the old police force where you'd be discriminated against. This is a clean sheet. This is your chance to be part of history. A proper police force that really does protect and serve, and so you can do that. You don't train them so that anybody might have a vegetable knife in his pocket. Right, we'll shoot him 10 times in the body. That's terrible. The sort of stop and searchy thing. No, because if we can do a better job of it. There are examples at the moment of police in Scandinavia, Norway, and places, and they treat with people so differently. The American police would have shot the same person, and they came over to Britain. Phil tells me about some American cops, and they were brought over to Britain, and they were shown some videotapes of how the British deal with people, and apparently all the way through they go, no, shoot him, no, shoot him now, shoot him, and they would have shot him a dozen times. But so you can we know about psychology now. We know that putting people in prisons is a terrible idea. And look at our recidivism rate, and look at some of the best examples around the world already. So you've already got a good start where you treat people like people, not like cattle, not like they've sinned and that's it for the rest of their lives. People can change, and people are born in certain circumstances which make it much more likely that they will have conflict with the law. And if you're of a certain colour, then you're even more likely to get in trouble with the law. It's a crazy system. So we have to also change our judicial system to make it one where everybody gets justice.
So this is what I was just about to say.
Uh-huh.
Realistically, if you're changing the police, you've also got to change the government.
Yeah, and you've got to change industry, and you've got to change environmentalism, and you've got to change transport, and we've got to change. I mean, at the moment we're running full steam towards a terrible future for our grandkids. I want my grandkids to grow up in a place where there's nature and the pace of life isn't hectic and people aren't dying left, right and centre, and somewhere where you can get clean water out of a tap. That's not a big thing, isn't it? But we're on course to pollute everything, and then think, oh well, there'll just be some technological fix and it'll all be done. No, we're running full tilt towards a cliff. It's craziness. So we do need to change all this education system, health, everything. But because it's not fit for purpose, is it? It's our over here in the good old UK, mother of all parliaments, it started off that only rich land-owning white men had the vote. So it was rich white men who were the MPs and things. It wasn't a level playing field. And we've still got roughly the same. It's still rich, unrepresentative white people at the top. So it's never going to go well, is it?
Yeah, definitely. You said you wanted to talk about Black lives.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, as a white man,
Yeah.
Have you ever witnessed racism going on?
Yeah.
And if you did witness it, what did you do at the time?
Well, the bit I was going to tell you about was when me and Phil moved to Handsworth, and we were a racial minority, and we went into this because we're buying this really cheap house, 11 grand, and there was no water, or anything. So we thought, well, we'd just go to the local shops, and we went into this pub, and we walked in, and everybody was Asian. And we walked in, and everybody just stopped, and we walked sort of silently up to the bar, and I said, "Can I buy some crisps?" And he said, "We don't sell crisps." And there was the crisps, and we went, "Oh, okay. Have you got any food?" We don't serve any food. And we went out. So I've experienced racism. So it's not just a one-way street. I know there's friends who've said, Asian guys, and they said, "Oh, discrimination is terrible and stuff," but I'd never employ a black man. I think a little bit racist. I don't know. So everybody can be racist against other people. It isn't a one-way street. But have I experienced somebody black being abused?
You're Asian. Just have you ever experienced someone else being racially abused?
Well, I must have at some point. I can't remember.
But knowing this, seeing it going on, and if you can, what did you do at that point?
Yeah. Can I come back to that one? I can't.
I was going to say, we'll go back to that because
spring into my mind.
The point you made was just a good one about racism and how it's viewed. So I think racism from Bob down the road is just tenements to name calling. You got white Bob down the road, you got black Dean down the road,
right?
Whatever, yeah. Bob calls Dean a black bastard, a nigger, anything like that.
Right.
Any racial slur, that is stowed upon us black people.
Yeah.
If he says that, that's just racism on, I think, a very surface level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think this is when we talk about racism. So when white people say they experience racism, I think it's on a very surface level, because real racism is affecting your life when it's coming from positions of power. So if my boss is racist, then that's going to affect me negatively, no matter what I do.
Yeah.
If Bob's racist down the road, he's not affecting my life, so it doesn't matter. He can have his opinion. But my boss is racist.
Yeah.
If my daughter's teacher's racist.
Yeah.
If the people who are meant to be protecting my children, the police are racist, then it becomes more than, as I said, just name calling.
Yeah.
So that's the difference where I feel racism between one person to another is bad, because no one should be disrespecting anyone. But when you're in a system, like a whole system that's pressing down on you, that's the difference. For a black person, an Asian person, and a white person. Yeah,
it is, and it's things that have been put in place, like laws that favour or when they're deciding how much each council's going to be given out from the pot, there's you can get rid of populations by saying, but we'll exclude that criteria. It's like in America, in the last election, there was a particular area, and they said, well, people from there we don't want them to vote. So they said, well, they're criminals, or people who are known to criminals and stuff, and it just happened to be a black neighbourhood. So they were able to use the law and little bits, very subtle things to sort of get people, like if if you're from a council estate, you know, you'll have a postcode, and there's ways that the rich white elite stay the rich white elite, because it's far more difficult for somebody from a different background to get up. Oh, which makes me think about, you know, the old Meghan Harry, you know, racism in the royal family. You know, can't say who it is, but
yeah.
Immediately
Well,
I was
the royal family to me are the people that, you know, we were talking off air about racism and being an actual racist, and then having prejudices that just run that deep. Like, I don't know, because I don't know them. I know Philip was, you know, family were Nazis through and through, but, you know, it was a long time ago. Hopefully it would have experienced life.
But the thing
So,
is, with Prince Philip, you know, we've heard him going, you know, being interviewed and saying those slanty-eyed types, you know, and spics and wops and you know, gollywog smiles and all that sort of stuff.
Yes, this is what I'm saying. So
that was him. Oh, how black's the little bugger going to be? Oh, good God. You know, can't you do something without him? Isn't no cream or something? You know, it's Prince Philip, that's who it was. You know, I mean, the bloody royal family full of ex-Nazis and brown shirts. And, honestly, people think, oh, they're so British. Oh, British through and through, crumpets and toast. Oh, yes. German, you know, they changed their name to Windsor, and because they used to be the Saxe-Coburg-Gothas. And when some German planes come across and drop some bombs on London, and they were made by the Gotha company, so there was a lot of anti-German feeling because the royal family were German, from the Habsburgs and places like that. So they go, oh, well, let's have a thoroughly English name. Windsor, well, it's Windsor Castle. Windsor, yeah. And people think, oh, the Windsor, so British. You know, it's like in Goodness Gracious Me, I think it was. And there was the Patels who'd wanted to become very gentrified, and they named themselves, you know, the Coburns or something, you know.
Celia, lonely child, Celia, my love, there is only you.
The media, well, it's free and fair, isn't it? Here in Britain we have a multi-billionaire who controls what we read and hear and see. You think maybe his opinions might have a bit of an effect on his editors, who he employs? He's the boss. So the media, what has it told us? It talks about the news all the time. So, you know, it's the BBC, for goodness sake. You've got to trust that. Have you seen much about the yellow vest protests in France? Because they're still going on. And lots of people were getting really severe injuries, and it was bringing France to a halt. Have you heard much about that? Have you heard anything about the massive strike or strikes in India involving 250 million people? The biggest strike in history of the world. Has it been on the news a lot? Have you heard much about it? Is it discussed? Or is it just what the latest that the royals think?
do you think the royals control the media?
I think the people who support the royals, the background people,
Yeah.
they control the media. I mean, there was a case recently, wasn't there? There was an American investigative journalist who didn't realise she was on a hot mic, and somebody was talking about Epstein, and she said, I had all this ready to go. I got Clinton, Epstein, the whole lot, proof of everything. And I think it was CBS said no, because the royal family didn't want any negative publicity about Andrew, and they said you won't have any access to the next royal baby or anything, or interviews with any of the junior royals. so don't run the story. And they clamped down on it and they stopped it.
Yeah.
And now, of course, everything's come out about Epstein. You know, but linking things, you know.
I think the media plays such a big role in influencing people.
Yeah, they do.
So I mean, they must have. I mean, it's said that, you know, newspaper people make prime ministers, make
Yeah.
them break them.
The press can make or break. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think? I'm trying to see where the news is the difference between being a business and something for the people. Like, people act like the news is for the people, but really it's just a business now, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Which
I mean,
is why
Bill Gates has actually donated money or given money to the BBC. I was amazed to hear about that. But Bill Gates gives to a lot of places, and if somebody's giving you loads of money, then you tend not to diss the hand that feeds you. So there's too much influence. There's too few people controlling the media. There used to be a lot more independent newspapers, but now they just tend to be owned by the same group.
Mm.
You know, and they share all their news and just write it in different fonts, and sometimes not even that. So the independent media is sadly diminished.
Well, isn't that what's good about this generation? Like, you really don't need that media now. You've got the world at your fingertips with the internet. You've got people doing independent stuff, like talking about what's going on locally. People, you know, independent broadcasters who have just got YouTube channels who are doing their own research and finding out things.
Yeah.
So is that old media dead? Will that influence Dwayne?
Well, no, they've just slightly adapted. I mean, like Facebook, you know, they control, and Google have this huge empire, and they're squirreling away loads and loads of data about every single one of us. And I was forgetting where I was going on that one. But so that's like if you've got a monopoly on anything, it doesn't. It's not good for us. And these massive corporations have got a monopoly, a virtual monopoly. So there's lots of us little people doing stuff, which is great. But the vast majority of people get their knowledge of the world from media that's presented to them. You know, TV. People believe, if somebody says something on TV, people just, yep, I believe that. And then if you've got written media and then like online papers and stuff, you know, if you are biased in one direction, then you'll write those stories up in one way, whereas somebody with a different bias will write it up in another way. And it's the same event. So we've got multi-billionaires who are giving us our information, and, you know, call me an old skeptic and stuff, but maybe they haven't got our best interests at heart. Maybe they've got the best interests of politicians. I mean, Murdoch over here in the UK, he had, I think it was 12 visits by David Cameron in 1 year. Not him going to see David Cameron, but David Cameron coming to see him. And that none of their none of their meetings were recorded. So when you've got a multi-millionaire media tycoon talking directly to a politician, I don't know, somehow it doesn't sit well with me. I have a suspicion that authorities they haven't got our best interests at heart. You know, going back again to the lockdown, that's not helping us. It's doing completely the wrong thing and blaming the wrong people, because they're blaming the COVIDiots and the anti-vaxxers. And by the way, I'm not having the vaccine. I've been offered it, and I said no, thank you, because I don't think it's rigorously tested like vaccines used to be. And I've had it, and it's not such a killer for me, and I don't see myself giving it to anybody else. until we decide that this whole thing is ridiculous, and we realise that it's endemic, and it's a coronavirus, like lots of other coronaviruses, and then we can go back to something better than normality, but not totalitarianism.
We are us, and us is love.
And I've been talking about the world wars,
Okay.
how in the First World War there was a powder keg situation, and then the killing of Archduke Franz Ferdinand was the spark, but it was all ready to go.
You know about World War One?
World War One.
Franz Ferdinand, and it was it the King of Belgium?
Well, but the thing is, it was it was ready for a war. They got 99% of everything ready to go. Huge tensions between Germany and the rest of the world, and lots of plots going on. So it was a powder keg, and then that one thing which they said, that was the cause of the First World War. It wasn't. It was just the spark.
The spark. Yeah.
Like in the Second World War, it was Pearl Harbor was the spark. But
was it? I thought the world would have been fighting before.
Oh yeah, for America, I should have said.
Yeah, for America, yeah.
But so the First World War, it was the getting the powder keg together, which is the most interesting part, really. Britain, America, and others had an embargo on Germany. They cut it off, basically, nothing in, nothing out, like they did in Cuba.
Yes.
So Germany was dying on its arse. It's the knowing that they were in a pincer grip.
Yeah.
They couldn't get out. That Germany was dying, which made it ready. They were ready.
Hyperinflation,
They were hyperinflation. They were ready for a battle, and then you just get the little, and off it goes. And the Second World War, well, also, like Britain had been torpedoing German things, and then there was the Lusitania and stuff. So to start the Second World War, it was people embargoing and like the Japanese in particular. There was an embargo that there was American warships all around the island, Japan. So Japan hadn't got any oil of its own, and so they had nothing else. Well, either give up without firing a shot, or we start war. So they had to do it. So they went into Pearl Harbor, and then the American military-industrial complex got on board, and woohoo, good times are here. But that's what I missed from last week's. I didn't talk enough about the powder keg.
Okay.
So I'm done for this week. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.